I think the paper he has written introduces him enough, but for the matter of protocol, Parin is a partner in the SRN company. He has been practicing in indirect taxes for more than around 15 to 18 years. And he has been speaker at various seminars. He has been the representative of the Maharashtra government with respect to GST. And he's drafting various provisions and making suggestions with respect to GST. He has been a speaker, paper writer, chairman at various organizations all throughout the country and various WRC or ICAI, BCA, our chamber. With this, I would request all of you to please welcome Mr. Parin Mehta. I would now request Krishnan sir to please hand over a memento as a love and affection from all of us. And now I request Parin to take over.
Before Parin takes so important announcement, only attention. We have to close at 2. A lot of people are going out station account. So no questions at all, no interruptions. Just otherwise we will miss some of his answers due to lack of time. He's got to speak recently. So nobody will raise any questions. He just moves on. If by the time he finishes before 2, at this institution he take his call. This is binding.
Good afternoon, everyone. Pardon my nervousness a bit in the presence of Sridharan sir, Sahu sir, Krishnan sir. So you will bear with me if you find that I am a little unsure of what I am going to say, because I am being judged by very senior followers. Well, first of all, I hope everyone can see me, because this is made for a 6-footer and I am a 4-footer. So it's a little problem. And with the laptop, you will be able to see me.
Directly made, matching your stature.
We have about 2 hours to go, and in 2 hours we have to discuss the various case studies which we have laid down. I must congratulate all the participants. There was very wonderful and very informative discussion which you have had. Of course, my task was to raise questions, and I was expecting to receive answers. But I realized that I was also getting further questions, and I was not really prepared for that. Because I thought these were all the questions they were to it. But then it seems there is more than just the questions I raised. What I will do, since in the interest of time, I will only concentrate and focus on the various aspects of the case studies which I wanted to discuss. There are some which are general in nature, which may not have very quick answers. We will probably skim through that. And as Krishnan sir said, we may have a Q&A session towards the end, or we can take one-on-one questions during the lunch break, provided you all are able to give a clear talk. So the first case study was in respect of sales to restaurants. And I will give you a little bit of background why I have posed this before the group for discussion. Of course, none of the groups have discussed this particular issue. The issue was really in relation to the rate of tax applicable when food is supplied to a restaurant. And the background is that if you go to the earlier provisions of the service tax law, in 2011 we introduced the tax on restaurants, and we said that the provision said it was services provided by a restaurant, and it also said within its premises or at its premises. There was an abatement notification which provided a 70% abatement. That abatement notification also said that services provided by a restaurant at its premises. And these were the words I wanted to really focus on, to really find out that whether these changing words will have any impact today. When we went into the negative list, there was no requirement for defining any services by a restaurant. Effectively, everything got taxed. And therefore, then we had the negative list exemption, which was given at serial number 19 for a restaurant which was not air conditioned or not having an alcoholic beverage license. And again, that negative exemption notification said services provided by a restaurant. The challenge arose to my mind was when you talked about supplies by restaurant services or food services under the valuation rules. And when you go to the valuation rules, rule 2C, again it says that it provides for a 60% abatement, therefore 40% is taxable. And here, if you find the wording is a little different. It says supply of food at a restaurant. And therefore that word between buy and at created a little bit of a confusion for me. And that's why I put this case study for our deliberation. Now if I quickly take you through the various situations which we have. There are 3 kitchens. 3 kitchens are serving 3 or 4 different kinds of restaurants or eating places. There are certain clarifications also issued, I will also touch upon those. The first kitchen is one which is serving or which is being used to serve food in a fine dining restaurant. A fine dining restaurant is an AC restaurant, clearly it's liable for tax, and therefore there is an abatement available, you pay tax on 40%. There is no challenge to that. There is a second kitchen, and kitchen number 2 supplies to two outlets. One is a sports bar and one is a beachside shack. Sports bar is AC, the shack is non-AC. Therefore, clearly again, the question arises whether tax will be payable or not payable. And here again, the services, the taxes on the services.
Which is AC, sir? Sports bar is AC.
Sports bar is AC. The sports bar is AC, and although it's a single common kitchen, the tax is on the provision of the service, the restaurant services or the supply of food, and therefore you have to pay tax only to the extent of food supplied in the AC restaurant. It's not liable when it's done in the non-AC area. So the beachside shack is an open area, therefore it's exempt, or there is no liability. And on the sports bar, which is an AC area, there is a liability. Now, and that is also the clarification given by the circular, and that is the circular dated 7th of October 2013. There was an earlier circular also on this. The question is, of course, what happens in the sports bar? The patrons have an option that do you want to have your food or drinks in the bar, or do you want to have it by the private beach? And again, the question would be that when the food is served not within the bar, which is AC, but a private beach, which is an outside location, at what rate should you pay tax, or is there an exemption? There, if you see the clarification issued by CBEC, again that's 7th of October 13, and that whole earlier one also, they have said that any food which is served in an open area, maybe an open area or a pool side, attached to a restaurant, they have made a little bit of a mischief. They said attached to a restaurant shall also be liable at the relevant time, and now also say that also shall be liable. That means here they are going by the words served by a restaurant, and they are saying since the restaurant is serving you at a private beach, and if this private beach is attached to the restaurant, then you have to pay tax. It is not exempted because although the private beach is not a condition, there will be a liability for payment of service tax, and once it is liable for payment of service tax, then you will have to automatically be entitled to the abatement of 40%. The 60% abatement, sorry, pay liability for payment of tax at 40%. The third kitchen is serving 2 locations. One is a 24-hour coffee shop, which is AC. Again, clearly liable, there is no problem, and it is also catering to room service. We had an earlier circular issued by the CBEC in 2011, where they said room service are not services provided by a restaurant, and therefore room service is not liable for tax. Now again the question arises that whether room service will be liable or not, and at what rate. Clearly, in the negative list, and the exemption only being when it is given in a non-AC environment, clearly room service will become liable. But the challenge arises in respect of the abatement, whether it is available or not. I had expressed a view earlier that to my mind, room service should be taxable at 12.36%, and you are not entitled to the abatement. And again, my reason is because of Rule 2C. Again, Rule 2C, which provides an abatement, only provides an abatement when it is served at a restaurant. Room service is not food which is served at a restaurant, and therefore, to my mind, the rate of tax applicable will be 12.36, and the benefit of the abatement is not going to be available. And this was precisely what I wanted to highlight before the group, that these are the dichotomy which has been created, the various conflicting ramifications they are given. In fact, for poolside, they went on to say attached to a restaurant. What do you mean attached to a restaurant? And there is a little bit of a mischief, I believe, where they were not sure, they also caveated it in a way by saying attached to a restaurant. So these issues are likely to come up. But of course, if it is a poolside, they are not likely to challenge it because they are going to say if it's poolside, if they say it's not attached to a restaurant, then you say it's exempted. So they will accept your 4.94% liability which you are going to discharge. The question is more likely to arise in the case of a room service. I also saw one or two cases where certain 5-star hotels have a separate kitchen for room service. That same kitchen does not serve the restaurants. It's only for room service. They prepare food over there, they only serve room service. Now clearly the benefit of the abatement will not be available and it simply goes to 12.36%. So that's the challenge which has arisen in sales, in hotel or restaurant sales. The next part of the question is in relation to minibar sales. The question is what happens to minibar sales? So of course clarified, so far as minibar sales are concerned, to the extent they are at MRP, it is a sale, there is no liability. I clearly agree with that, there is no problem. The only issue now again being that most hotels, particularly star hotels, will levy a huge service fee. You may have a 25 rupee bottle of Coke which is sold at 75 rupees. And there we have a Bombay High Court decision which says that in a restaurant, food can be served or drinks can be served at a price higher than the MRP because it's not a transaction of sale, it's a transaction of service. And therefore, you are not bound by the MRP regulations. That's the only way they could get around the MRP restrictions so far as hotels and restaurants are concerned.
Bombay or Delhi, sir?
So Bombay High Court, to my mind, I don't have the citation immediately. Bombay High Court it was.
Delhi also.
Now, here this issue was, over the years, all hotels have been taking a stand that we in the room service also, when we charge 75 rupees for a bottle of Coke, there is a service element because what we are providing is a service to the patrons, to the residents. And therefore, this is not a transaction of sale, and they'll be getting around the MRP restriction. Now, again, the question arises that will you be able to change your stand under the negative list? To say, no, now it is a transaction of sale, I will not be liable to pay tax on this transaction, and it is not a transaction of service. Again, I feel that this is going to be a challenge, it's going to be difficult, and therefore, advisable, and what also many other hotels have started doing, they started paying a service tax also on the minibar sales from the rooms because of the huge service fee which they are normally taking.
Full rate?
Sorry?
Full rate?
Full rate, it's not a restaurant. We are going to get a contrary from Sheeran sir soon.
No, ऐसे नहीं है.
Please sir, that we must.
I don't know this, but I was just only thinking South has a good value. For packaged commodity rules, it will be a service. For sales tax, it's a deemed sale because it will be a supply. And what is tax is a supply as well as this thing. And deemed sale, this negative list exclude, whatever the definition of service exclude deemed sale. It does not say sale portion as deemed sale. No.
So the service portion will get taxed. So even if we apply that, to say that there is going to be it's a transaction of deemed sale, which is the supply of food as part of any service, then in any event, even at least the service portion will have to be taxed.
One more view.
Yes, sir.
It's actual sale. It may not be sold at MRP because that place is not a retail sales agency. It's not a retail shop where anybody can walk in and buy.
Correct.
So MRP is not applicable. But the guest is getting the same environment, he is only picking up from the minibar and paying for that. So it is actual sale at a higher rate.
It is a sale and the MRP regulations do not apply at all. Okay. The information which I got and which I understood was that here there are issues also under the Metrology Act where issues are being raised in respect of the sales in restaurants or in minibar sales regarding the MRP applicability. So it is with this context that I think the industry has taken a stand that to levy the tax at the full applicability.
If the levy is valid, then service portion is taxable. I'm sorry, I was making a mistake. You are right.
Thank you, sir. The next is
Abatement notification is issued to take care of the goods portion.
the goods portion.
If that is so, when served in a room also the same process.
So the question is, in that case, whether they will be able to deduct it as a goods portion. or not. By treating it as a lead sale as 36629AF, But better view which I felt, considering the way the transaction is structured and the difficulty in discerning the service element and the sale element, but better to pay tax on the whole transaction. The second case study goes about a company which is really making various payments to its employees and also is making various recoveries from its employees. And the question was, the issues were relating to such payments or recoveries. Now, a little bit of a background also here is that there was this draft circular which was issued sometime in July 2012. You might have had a look, where there was a discussion by the CBEC to say that whenever any recoveries are made from any employee, these will be transactions of services, and therefore the employer has to pay tax. Also, they said that whenever any salary is foregone by an employee, then that is effectively a consideration for a service which is provided by the employer to the employee, and therefore it needs to be subject to tax. Of course, a lot of vehement protests and a lot of strong representations had gone at that point in time, and therefore they have not really taken this draft circular forward, and it's just left as it is, or really it's died and it should not there. And it was with this background that various questions were raised. First was, of course, in relation to overtime, and whether the overtime would be liable. Clearly, it's a transaction of in the nature of in the course of employment, and there is already in the definition of service an exclusion in respect of services provided by an employee to an employer. But bear in mind that exemption or the exclusion which is there in the definition of services provided by an employee to an employer. It doesn't talk about the vice versa. So that has to be kept in mind whether there will be any liability. The next is a question of referral bonus which is paid for referring new employees. And many companies have this particular practice of giving a small bonus if you introduce prospective employees who are engaged or who are employed. Whether these will be liable to tax or not. Now here, of course, there were divided views of the group. This is Divane and Parvane both have discussed this, and there were divided views. There were one view which said that it is applicable in relation to the employment or in the course of employment. There was another view which says that it's not in the course of employment and therefore it's a separate transaction altogether. So both the groups effectively were divided on this. My take on this is that my take on this is that this should be forming part and parcel of the salary. It's an additional emolument which is given to an employee to incentivize him to refer certain prospective employees. It should be treated as an activity which is done in the course of his employment. There is no separate agreement or a contract to provide this service, and therefore there should not be a liability for payment of tax. It should not be treated as a separate service. The third question was in relation to free use of an in-house gym and a trainer. Of course, one, it is free and there is no question of any service, and therefore there should not be any liability for payment of tax. Also, it's more of a facility which is provided to the employees. The fourth was optional pickup and drop facility, and there were two views on this. Divane said that this is in relation to relation to the employment, and therefore there is no liability for payment of service tax. However, Parvane was of the view that Parvane had a divided view. They said that it could be either not taxable, but they said that it could be part of the CTC, and therefore it's part and parcel of the employment, and therefore not taxable. Now, what my submission over here will be a little different. Treating this as part of CTC will be a little bit of a stretch, because what you really are doing in a CTC calculation is whenever you have an employee, you offer that employee an option to either get full salary or to get something in return. To say that, okay, you have a possibility of getting a salary of 10 lakh rupees a year, but instead of that, do you want a house, do you want a car, in which case your cash component goes down and the facilities which you get go up. And whether these are then therefore really in the nature of services or not. Now, what I feel here is that when it is part of CTC, you could treat it as a transaction to say that this is in the course of employment and therefore there is no real recovery which is made by the employer from the employee, and therefore there should not be a liability for payment of tax. On the other hand, if this was not really forming part of your CTC computation, but say you are anyway offering at a particular grade, say 5 lakh rupees salary every year, and then you make an offer that do you want this particular facility, which is an additional facility, for which you will deduct 1,500 rupees without going into your CTC calculation, I think the risk of a taxable service coming into existence is a little higher over there, with the treatment being that this was a separate offer made by the employer to the employee, which was accepted, and the employer is there providing these services to the employee, for which there should be a liability for payment of tax. So again, sometimes this will play on the way it is structured, the way the offer is made. Was it a separate offer? Was it a part of the CTC structuring? And that may really change. Again, documentation plays a key to this. The serial number 5 was reimbursement of actual expenses incurred for meals and travel after hours in the course of employment. Clearly, to my mind, this is in the course of employment. There is no question of any liability for payment of service tax on this, because these are actually services availed by the employee when he is traveling, availed on behalf in a way of the employer, and there could not be any liability. The next part of this question goes on to say that there are certain recoveries which have been made from the employees. One example or one case over here has been that the company follows a procedure of paying advance bonus every year. They pay the bonus for the whole year in Diwali, at the time of Diwali, in anticipation that the employee will be there with them up to March. And if the employee leaves before March, pro rata bonus is recovered. What will happen to this recovery? Will this be treated as a reduction in salary, or will it be treated as a consideration for allowing him to leave the employment and therefore liable for service tax as a separate transaction? Here, to my mind, when an advance bonus is given, it is with the understanding that you will have to refund this if you are not in employment. It is effectively a reduction in the salary. You are just recouping your salary which has been paid in advance, and therefore there will not be a liability for payment of service tax on this. But what will happen to notice pay which is recovered from employees when someone is not serving the notice period, which is the next case? Now this is becoming a little bit of a issue.
Notice pay coupled with advance bonus.
No, that is separate. Advance bonus is separate.
Okay.
Notice pay by itself. The peculiar situation is arising on account of 66EE, which says agreeing to an obligation to refrain from an act, to tolerate an act or a situation, or to do an act, and whether this will get covered over here or not. And there are some companies which have already started recovering service tax from the employees if they are leaving early, in addition to the notice pay, and they are depositing this tax. Whether this will be liable for payment of service tax or not. Diwali was of the view that it is a recomputation of salary, and therefore there should not be service tax. There were alternatives also within the group. One part of the team said that this was agreeing to an obligation, and therefore it could be liable, or this could be in the nature of liquidated damages, on which they felt on liquidated damages there should not be liability for payment of service tax. Parvani was of the view that that there is no agreement, and therefore it does not fall within the purview of agreeing to an obligation, and therefore there should not be a liability for payment of service tax. Effectively, to interpret the clause 66EE, whether there should be a separate agreement for such a transaction and such a recovery or not. Now, it is a little tricky. I also very honestly do not have a final view on this, but I would err on the side to say that such a transaction should not be liable for service tax, because to my mind this is more in the course of employment. It is more of a compensation which is given. However, will you be able to extend this to 66E and then say that they should constitute a separate transaction? And that is where I would just want to spend a minute. We look at the definition of service, and of course that's the most important part after the introduction of the negative list. and then you compare that definition of service and the various clauses, the definition of service, declared services, bundled services, and then you also look at in the declared services this particular clause. So this particular clause, again, agreeing to an obligation to refrain from an act, to tolerate an act or a situation, or to do an act, by itself can be interpreted in such a wide term to say that I did not need anything else under the service tax law. I do not need the definition of service because everything is to refrain, tolerate, or do. Then that by itself would have covered the whole gamut of services, the service tax law. Therefore, what is the scope?